Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into what is, without a doubt, the ultimate organic supercomputer, the human mind. Specifically, we'll be breaking down an absolutely fascinating presentation brought to us by Dr. Christophe DeLong and Connexa. Let me tell you, the way they explain how our brains literally rewire themselves to achieve true expertise, it totally flipped my perspective on what mastery really means. I'm so excited to unpack this with you.
So think about this for a second. How is it physically possible for a master physician to walk into a room and know exactly what's wrong with a patient before a single word of greeting has even been exchanged? It sounds like magic, right? Well, it's actually neuroscience. You see, true mastery isn't about working harder or even thinking more intensely. It's about working entirely differently. Decades of practice literally alter the physical structure and the daily operation of the brain.
When a medical novice looks at a new case, their brain lights up like a pinball machine. We're talking massive, diffuse activation all over the place. They're heavily mobilizing their attention, painstakingly reasoning through everything step by step by step. But the expert? They actually experience a massive 60 to 70% reduction in the activation of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Now that's basically the brain's high-effort manual override center. So they're actually using way less energy to achieve superior performance. Instead of panicking, they rely on a cool, incredibly efficient, targeted autopilot.
Imagine the expert brain is like a highly optimized, futuristic city. After years of practice, specialized regions become connected by these ultra-fast neural expressways. That prefrontal, high-effort thinking center we just talked about, it transitions into this highly sophisticated autopilot. It knows exactly when to trust automated processes that have been refined over decades, and it only ever shifts back into manual, high-effort control when a situation is so complex or atypical that it absolutely demands it.
But to build a reliable autopilot, you need data, right? A lot of data. Try 440,000 distinct decision and consequence episodes. Let that sink in. That is a massive mental library of experiences. Over the course of a 30-year career, an expert has encoded this staggering volume of cases straight into their ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This creates incredibly precise associations between an external stimulus and its actual real-world value.
And here's where it gets wild. It turns out those 440,000 past experiences are actually tapped into through what neurologist Antonio Damasio calls somatic markers. Basically, every diagnostic option becomes implicitly linked to subtle physical signals in the doctor's own body. We're talking a slight acceleration in heart rate, or maybe just a tiny shift in muscle tension. You know that sudden bad feeling you get in the pit of your stomach right before making a risky turn in your car? It's exactly like that. This automatic gut feeling guides the doctor toward the most probable hypothesis based on an invisible internal calculation, often way before they consciously realize what they're even thinking.
All of this builds into an advanced, totally subconscious alarm system. You've got the anterior cingulate cortex constantly scanning for conflicts or errors. And because it's calibrated against those hundreds of thousands of past cases, it knows how to perfectly ignore normal irrelevant variations while powerfully amplifying weak but critical signals. Meanwhile, the anterior insula creates internal body awareness, triggering this implicit, I don't feel comfortable with this diagnosis vibe. These internal systems flag invisible errors long before the expert can even find the words to explain what's wrong. Okay, this brings us to a phenomenon that honestly borders on a superpower, expert vision. I'm not kidding, an expert literally sees the world differently than a novice does. Decades of practice radically recalibrates their physical visual pathways. This allows their eyes to instantly pinpoint pathological signals, all while completely blinding themselves to irrelevant, distracting details. Just consider the sheer volume of data we encounter every day. Every single second, your retina captures roughly 100 million bits of visual data. 100 million. But the expert brain, brutally and automatically, throws away 90 to 95% of that visual noise before it ever even reaches their conscious awareness. They only consciously perceive the 5 to 10% of information that actually contains real, actionable diagnostic value.
The eye tracking data on this reveals something absolutely incredible. While a novice takes 15 to 30 seconds kind of wandering around with 15 to 25 different eye fixations just trying to find a problem, the expert detects anomalies in just 1 to 2 seconds. Their brain generates a priority map so powerful that 85% of the time, their very first glance is directed exactly at the problem area. They completely ignore the colorful, obvious distractions and instantly lock onto things like a subtle microtremor or a really slight asymmetry. Let's break down exactly how ridiculously fast this all happens.
In the first 80 milliseconds, the eyes and visual cortex are just processing basic light and shapes. But by 250 milliseconds, the brain is already separating normal from abnormal. At 400 milliseconds, that massive pattern matching against nearly 500,000 cases kicks in. By 600 milliseconds, boom, the dominant hypothesis is selected. And in the second or two right after that, they're doing a minimalist physical exam purely to validate what the brain already suspects. It's a literal lightning-fast cascade.
Which leads us to a realization that I found truly astonishing. The functional diagnostic decision has already been made between 400 and 500 milliseconds well before it even becomes conscious. Think about that. The patient hasn't even finished saying hello, and yet the neural cascade is completely finished. The puzzle is literally solved faster than the conscious mind can even formulate the thought.
So how on earth is such speed even achievable? Well, it all comes down to parallel cognitive processing. Novices think sequentially, right? Step 1, then step 2. But experts, they process information simultaneously across 10 to 15 different channels. The right parietal cortex is analyzing global posture, while the brain's motion centers are evaluating walking patterns, and language centers are processing verbal complaints, all at the exact same time. This multitasking basically multiplies the integration of data by 3 or 4 times every single second.
But here's the thing. True expertise doesn't just rely on an individual's internal geography. To really push past the physical limits of a single human skull, an expert's mind actually networks outward to expand its overall cognitive capacity.
This outward networking is what we call transactive medical memory. It's basically a distributed cognitive network. An expert actually maintains these highly detailed mental models of the specific strengths, experiences, and even the diagnostic styles of 50 to 100 of their colleagues. Think of it like having the distinct processing power of 100 different doctors running quietly in the background of your own mind. It's not just about knowing facts, it's about knowing exactly who knows what. It acts like a massive hardware upgrade, allowing them to instantly crowdsource and delegate the most complex medical puzzles.
And you know what? This network isn't just made up of human colleagues. It also includes the implicit integration of somewhere between 3,000 to 6,000 scientific articles. The expert's brain is constantly performing an automatic internal statistical synthesis, comparing standard textbook guidelines with the gritty reality of their own clinical experience. They're effortlessly adapting generalized population rules to the unique individual variations of the patient sitting right in front of them. It is quite literally a real-time, context-aware meta-analysis happening in their head.
So all of this, the lightning-fast parallel processing, the subconscious anomaly detection, the distributed knowledge network, it all culminates in the ability to make what we call intersectional diagnoses. This is the ability to basically see the invisible. It's the capacity to solve those tricky, multi-domain cases that completely stump individual isolated specialists who might only be looking at one tiny piece of the overall puzzle. Let's look at a real-world example. Say an elderly patient comes in because they keep falling down, suffering from severe disequilibrium. Now, a neurologist might look at them and suspect a cerebellar issue. A geriatrician might just shrug and blame normal aging. A rheumatologist might only look for localized arthritis. See, they all miss the actual root cause. But the multidimension expert? They look at the patient and instantly see the entire invisible chain reaction. They see ankle arthrosis causing a knee compensation, which shifts the posture, which then overloads the lumbar region, irritating the L5 nerve, resulting in a motor deficit and causing that ultimate fall. They see that entire story in a single practiced glance.
Which brings us to our final big question. If decades of dedicated practice can literally rewire our brains from the inside out, transforming our vision, creating vast parallel processing networks, and allowing us to solve the invisible in a fraction of a second, what are the true limits of human mastery? The sheer adaptability and efficiency of the human mind are just absolutely astounding to me. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it leaves you as fascinated by our own cognitive potential as I am. Keep learning and keep exploring.